how was your meeting with General McChrystal? I was going to meet General McChrystal in DC, and the day I was going to meet him, he had emergency surgery. So I met some other people from the McChrystal group, including a major general, and we took some cards, and my chief of staff has been communicating with his chief of staff. And at some point, I might even set up a mentoring arrangement because they're a really good leadership organization. And McChrystal's a really nice guy. He's a smart dude, and he's, Team of Teams was a good book. And really, his whole thing is about how do you get organizations to work well together when you don't have explicit mandates or power. So it's not so good for the leadership of IOHK. There's some value that could provide. But it's much better when you're talking about that tripartite between Emergo, CF, and IO, where we're all equal parties and we have to work together, but not always do we work together as well as we should. So it's super important that we find different structures to collaborate when power is more horizontal than vertical. And Team of Teams is a really good curriculum for that. So I have a lot of respect for Stanley McChrystal, and we were going to meet up with him at some point. And, Corona made that very difficult. But I do generally talk to a lot of people in the defense complex and the intelligence complex, from former people at various agencies to, generals like McChrystal and others, because a lot of them are now in private industry. They work either in consulting groups or like Petraeus works for not Kleiner Perkins, but Kravis, KKR, these types of houses. And so they have a lot of decision authority behind capital, the deployment of capital, and they're of course really concerned about where cryptocurrencies are going to go. Cryptocurrencies create a geopolitical reality that's very interesting to the defense industry, where first they potentially have an impact on a fundamental tool of statecraft, which is sanctions. So that is always in the backdrop. And then second, they allow you to do things like create alternative views of the economy. And so you can use them for collection of intelligence. So there's definitely a component there that they're very interested in. And then there's also a situation where they actually, in some cases, could potentially eventually define who gets to run the country. For example, if you move your census and identity system and voting system to a cryptocurrency-based system, well, then we, a small Wyoming company, could actually potentially have a huge impact on the elections of some foreign government. So there's like a Logan Act consideration there. There's all kinds of craziness that could come up. So, we regularly talk to State Department and other people just to make sure that everything is nicely balanced in the way we think. And also, U.S. government is a great resource about what's going on in countries. And I encourage any person who's a U.S. citizen, who is a U.S. business owner, who does business abroad, to actually spend some time talking to the State Department in the country you're doing business in. For example, I had lunch with the ambassador of Mongolia. I was meeting the president of Mongolia, and we talked to the State Department, and we said, hey, can we talk to the ambassador before we meet the president? Why? Because I wanted to understand what was the U.S. position on Mongolia, and what did the U.S. government know about Mongolia that could potentially be relevant to things, because they kind of have an opinion on things like political stability. Whether a particular regime is long-lived or short-lived, who is really the kingmaker in the country. We spend billions of dollars, literally, to gather this information, and the State Department usually is well more than willing to give you some ideas of people you shouldn't do business with or should do business with, or the stability of affairs in that country, or concerns like, is there proper rule of law, or are there kangaroo courts, or these types of things. You see, this is something that many entrepreneurs don't get, especially in countries like the United States, is that while the government as a monolithic entity is in many cases incompetent, counterproductive, fraud-filled, and wasteful, there are still millions of people who wake up every day and provide services which we pay for out of our wallet as taxpayers, from the Small Business Administration to things in the federal government like the State Department. And the people who work in those capacities as civil servants are well more capable of having conversation with you on a regular basis, retired or otherwise. And in some cases, it's so easy. Just pick up the phone, call them, or send them an email, take them to lunch. And, in some cases, nobody talks to them. And so they're well more than willing just to sit down and give you an exhaustive conversation about things that they've learned. And remember, if somebody spent 20 years of their life in some environment with the U.S. flag behind them, the most powerful government in the world, they're bound to be a pretty good domain expert and have a very nuanced, very comprehensive, fact-driven view of that jurisdiction and the realities of doing business in that jurisdiction. This is one of the reasons why we've been able to scale to 20 countries and navigate those and not run into a lot of little local problems, is because we've been very systematic and careful about how we approach these governments, how we talk to them, and we also understand what the U.S. position is, so we kind of know where our flexibility can be in that respect.